Hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. We have an amazing dancer, choreographer, and performer and teacher on the podcast with us today. She's an amazing Greek dancer, normally based in London, currently back home. She is. I love the way that this woman moves. Like her dancing is incredible. Like the best way that I can describe it is that it's just like kind of waves crashing on a shore, because it's just that combination of like flow and momentum with kind of explosiveness and energy. And she has a really fantastic quality to the way that she moves. We're excited to talk about her new project today, Greener Grass. So she's doing a lot of exciting things. Would love to welcome to the podcast Vivian Triantafyllopoulou. Vivian, welcome.
Yay! Thank you very much for inviting me, David. I'm very, very excited to be here. And thank you for all the beautiful words you just said about me. I was like, ah.
Oh, no worries at all. It's you definitely win the award for most difficult name on a podcast.
Yeah. Well done, though, for saying it. Super well done.
Just give it a try. Yeah, it's good. I think it's good to take the time to actually learn people's names, and it's a hard thing as well. Like as an immigrant, and it can be a part of like the immigrant experience. I'm an immigrant, but I'm really lucky that like because my family's ethnic Welsh going like way back. I have the last name Evans, so British people are already familiar with my last name, which made it a lot kind of easier. I don't know. This can be those certain things. Was there like in terms of like moving to the UK? When did you move to London actually?
I moved to London in 2012, 1st of September 2012.
Wow, goodness. And did you move there for training?
Yeah, so I grew up in Patras, which is a town in Greece, and then I spent 1 year training in Athens in dance. And then a friend of mine kind of like called me one day and she said, there's this audition in Athens from this dance school in London. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. I didn't say it to anyone because I was not planning to move. And it was the carnival as well. So I was in a party the Friday night until
Oh,
like
really?
3 a.m. And then I was like, oh, guys, I have to go because I have a dance class tomorrow in the morning. And they were like, but it's the carnival weekend. I was like, yeah, And then I woke up in the morning and I went to
at 3
the.
a.m. Like, oh, let's call it an early night.
Yeah, but everyone stayed until 6, 7 a.m. So they were like, why are you leaving? And then I went to the audition and I was like, I love that. I want to get in that. And I got in and I was like, okay, I guess I'm leaving. And that's why I moved and I got in Trinity Laban. So I studied in Trinity Laban in London in Greenwich from 2012 until 2015.
Are there differences that you've noticed in the like kind of attitudes and approaches to dance that you encountered when you came to London, or like a different vibe to the dance scene versus like home?
Yes. Yes, like it was actually quite big. So dance in Greece is definitely growing. But what I was overwhelmed by, especially by being in London, is how dance was a big thing, even for people that were not dancers. There were many performances, many dance schools, many workshops, many opportunities to meet other artists. Art is such a vibrant thing in London. In Athens, it is as well. We have so many amazing artists, but especially when I left, it was still a little bit like, oh, you're going to become a dancer. Okay. And then what is your real job? When I went to London, I realized that dance was a real job for many people that were around me. So that was one perspective that it was different. And then the movement. London has more variety of styles. So in Greece, it was very physical, what the training I did, at least until I moved. So it was full on physicality, full on like that. In London and in my training, there was a lot of physicality, but also I learned much more about other practices and collateral training with other techniques, and going a little bit more to the inside and finding more like experiential anatomy classes, and talking about physical awareness, talking about, yes, and more creative as well, dancing. And yeah, I felt that was the big difference, that I could take a step back. And, for a bit, I in the first month, actually, because we had a few classes that we were lying on the floor for a long time, I was like, I'm like 19 years old. I want to move. I want to throw myself around, as I know. But then I realized, okay, yes, but there is both. And then doing both gave me a great balance.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I sort of had a similar thing, like, especially because I'm a dancer that, this sounds like obvious, but a dancer that loves to move. But that's not always the case. And I kind of feel like, yeah, like I love being a dancer because it gives me a place to put all this like energy, and all this physical energy and like all this feeling. And it gives me like a place to like channel it and kind of put it. And it was similarly difficult for me doing that, because, and finding that softness and finding a more kind of finding a way to find the moments of quiet as well, in order to then highlight the movement and the energy, so that it didn't have to always be in that place of like, but it definitely, there was a few moments where we did those exercises and I just full out fell asleep.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think it's about like learning how to take care of the body to be a long-term dancer rather than a 5 years dancer, which it was something I definitely learned through my training, as well as being challenged physically. Don't get me wrong. I had amazing teachers that really pushed us physically, and I still work with some of them. And yeah.
I think, it's something that contemporary dance does really well, and something that Laban does really well through their kind of very somatic, proprioceptive kind of approach to dance, is kind of that body awareness. And certainly for me, like coming from a background of like break dance, it was so physical, and just kind of like doing it no matter how the body feels, it really helped me like have less injuries, and just have better spatial awareness in my dancing. Because I was taking so much longer to warm up, and actually and just being kinder to my body. And actually it was giving me more stamina, because I was finding like when you warm up slowly and softly, like over a course of an hour, 2 hours, like you can dance like an 8-hour day and like have the energy for that day. But if you just go in hard, you're burnt out in an hour, because, the muscles are tight, so they're just like contracting really hard, and then an hour goes by and you're done. So I also found that it really helps like just give me a bit more engine and a bit more kind of get more out of my dance day, actually. And it gave me more energy by like just being a little bit kinder to my body, basically. It's it's an interesting one. What are things from that, in terms of the approach to your body, that you take into the studio now? Are those things that you think about as like a choreographer, like trying to get your dancers ready for the day?
Definitely. Like for me, that's one of the biggest things when I started. I mean, I say started working as a choreographer, but I don't know, I made my first piece when I was, 7 years old at my balcony. So for me, that's also choreography. I'm not very like, I'm a professional choreographer now. I've always been making movements, so that means I've been choreographing, and I believe the same for many people. But anyway, let's say now I'm doing it, and I'm doing the whole funding thing and proper company, and trying to do it more as a full out professional experience for everyone. But yes, definitely something that when we go in the studio, both in this piece, Greener Grass, that is a duet, and in my bigger piece, we did Igomas, that is a 5 dancers piece. And in my classes, I do make sure that when we go in the studio, we find a way to enter with what we have and realize where we're at, to see how we can work, and to warm up the body, but also prepare the mind and the psychology to see what you can bring from outside the studio and from your life, and what you need to leave out, what you can process and work with where you're at. So then you can really warm up mentally and using visualizations and imagination. And usually we go through like with a little bit either of a nice closed process that I do a little bit of speaking on top, and we move and we improvise, as well as physical warm up, sometimes body conditioning, sometimes improvisation. Sometimes we've done also a little bit of a class warm up. So yes, for me it's very important. And also, even what song you're going to put in the morning, or how you're going to say good morning to people, or how you're going to ask how are you today, and check how, if there's an injury, to check with them how's the injury going, or if something happening, how are you? Because for me it's beautiful, that we go in the studio and something magic happens, but at the same time I cannot deny we're all people and we all have other lives too, and we all carry our stories. So there needs to be, for me, preparation, understanding, and a process of entering the space in order to start working.
I think that's so important. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, because there's some things where there's elements of the outside that you can bring into the space and it's helpful, and then sometimes it's not helpful, and you need to find a way to sort of leave those things at the door. And I think bringing the mind into the space and being present is so important. And I think actually it's where a lot of, I think, the release of dance comes from. Certainly for me, or for people who are kind of overthinkers, like part of what I love about dance is like its immediacy. It brings you into your body, and because it brings you into your body, it brings you into like this very present moment. And that's literally and just psychologically like very grounding, I find, and is kind of like a great release and bringing you into this moment. But I think also you highlight something that's really important, which is the importance of the cool down. How mentally do you exit that space as well? Because when I've seen it done really well, kind of as you say, if you get into, especially when it's sometimes you get, especially in choreography, you get into kind of intense themes, it's really important to have like an emotional cool down, to have a way to exit that feeling together. Because like I remember doing like workshops and choreography that I've done, especially at times when, I had like high anxiety, and we would get to that place and then there was no emotional cool down. So suddenly class or the rehearsal or session ends, and you're just, and I'm just like, I'm still in this place, like I'm still like here, and like now I'm like just having to go and just like calm myself down outside, because we didn't find a way to do that in the studio.
It is, I understand, though it is sometimes challenging to find the time, because for me as well, I completely agree. And then you're in the process of having a 3-hour booked space as an independent artist, and the next artist is coming in exactly on the clock, and you need to finish this choreographer after. So I think even if you're not doing it every time, then it's something we should share and discuss to make sure that each of us find their own way of exiting, even if it means just standing outside in stillness for 1 minute, or doing a stretch for 5 minutes, even on the corridor of the dance studio. So then, I mean, it would be ideal to have it every single time, a cooling down altogether of some sort, of a reflection of some sort. Like many times we do, like we've been doing with the company as well, with Igomas and stuff, and in some workshops I was doing like since 6 years ago, that we kind of share a word of how something we want to keep from what we did today, or something we want to take away. And even just putting the process of saying this word, and then you can keep on that word for the rest of the day, let's say, or think about that, and then a process of closing some sort. I think it is important.
Yeah, and it's helpful, like when you're a dancer as well, I think, to take that moment also of appreciating what you did that day. And it's helpful to hear that from the choreographer as well, and to kind of just reflect a little bit on what has kind of happened in the space. And I find those things kind of then just solidify in the mind a little bit better. Just coming away from the session, not just being like, oh, that happened, but like understanding what happened, and like having a place of like kind of processing it in a way. You're working on a duet at the minute.
Yes.
What is it that you enjoy about, do you tend to make more kind of group works or works with other people or solo? What's kind of your preference?
I don't know if I have a preference. I think it just depends on the idea, and I would
Right.
go for what I think the idea needs. So
Mm.
I love working with a big group. Definitely. I really love it. It is something
Mm.
that I just like people in general. Like I'm a very people's person. I feel very good when there are people around or when I can gather lots of people in the studio and everything. There is something that I love, the different ideas that everyone can put in and the different characters and the fact that there's the energy in the room. I find it very nice energy, like it fills the room somehow of a group.
Mm.
And also I feel there is a lot of ideas and lots of solutions and loads of things that can come up. However, saying that, I have made a solo myself before, I have made duet before, I have made a solo on someone else before, so I'm up for anything. And now creating a duet that I'm actually in the duet as well, because it's different, it's very challenging to be in your choreography.
Yeah.
And I know that. And there are so many people that they have been telling me, don't do it. I'm like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because I think there is the right way, the useful way, the way that works for each person to do it if they want.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in the group piece we made before, Igomas, I was not in it for the past 2 years. I was in it like trying things. I was in it like choreographing some parts of it with my movement.
Mm-hmm.
I was in it by improvising together with the dancers when I was leading improv sometimes. But when I was choreographing the structure, I was on the outside. And then in the last months, I brought someone in to be me. I made my part on them, and then I learned it.
Yeah.
So that was something that worked. Now, we're making this duet and greener grass with one more dancer, female, and it is challenging to be inside and to be inside from the very first moment. We had an R&D last year as well, though, so it's not completely new. But I use a lot of videos. And I also use a lot outside eyes. So we will have lots of different people coming in the studio. We also have a dramaturge working with us, and we have a rehearsal director. So then we can have the outside eye. But it's nice because it's like someone is the other dancer, Christina Probona is her name. She's also Greek. And we have a very beautiful connection, also as personal connection, as well as a very good professional workshop. Professional connection, sorry, not workshop. And so it's a very nice energy there as well, because it feels a little bit more home-like, a little bit more like there is space. And there is always the challenge though when you work with friends that you catch up about your news for 20 minutes instead of starting to warm up. But okay, you overcome that after a while.
But yeah, that's definitely true. It is, yeah, I think one of the things of it's different, right? Because when you're outside the work and other dancers are dancing it for you, it kind of just lends itself to different approaches. It allows you to see the piece more. And in that way to be more visual about what you're creating. I think it's a little bit easier if you're with your choreography, you're doing more kind of image making of constructing like specific shapes and images. It's certainly helpful for correction. And it is helpful from like a wearing one hat point of view. You're not worrying about being a dancer. You can just focus on like being a choreographer. But then like being in the piece, like the advantage of that is you're able to actually feel the piece from the kind of inside out and develop it kind of as a dancer, and kind of a little bit like we're talking with Lab, and develop it more from that kind of intuitive internal place. And I find pieces that are often developed this way often have a better flow to them and feel a bit more kind of, they feel a bit more kind of organic and usually more relational as well. Because they're developed, it's more about what's happening between the dancers and in the body, and it's more of the feeling that's then being transmitted outwards to the audience. Whereas sometimes choreography that is built from the outside in is incredibly beautiful, until you, a dancer, have to dance it. And then you realize, wow, this choreography is like immensely awkward and like hard on the body and difficult and weird. And you don't really realize that because it's just like, oh, let's build this interesting image. But then actually it feels really weird in the body. But so it's just different approaches and
different approaches, yeah.
and it's really interesting to have that bit of both of, do you build it from internal textures or kind of external visual ones?
Yeah, it gives you, it's very different and it's really exciting, because when I danced Tigomas, the one that I was not in and I jumped in after creating it on someone else, it gave me ways as well to better support the dancers in some very inside the choreography details that from the outside, okay, I knew how to direct it, but being inside, you're part of them. And what they told me as well is that because I've put so much in this piece, and there is so obviously, like when you create it, there's a lot of your voice in there, definitely in huge collaboration with the dancers. It's like always, they're so important. But they said that like when I was dancing it with them, they felt a little bit more secure as well, and they felt more the energy of what the piece really is from my energy just around with them.
Right. Yeah.
So then there was another communication of what we're looking in this piece without words, which is dance. So and then now this piece, Greener Grass, by being in it, I mean, we're still like in the process of the creation, but I can tell that like it's becoming very personal experience and very personal between me and Christina. It becomes a really, really close work, one-to-one.
Yeah.
And then the visuals, I can see the videos, okay. But the emotion is it's very strong.
Yeah. And I think it helps, as you say, kind of have a bit more immediacy in terms of getting to what's the feeling your dancers are having, or what's the theme, what's the texture, what's the vibe, of kind of getting to the nitty gritty. And in terms of conveying that as well, there's an immediacy, right? Because if you're seeing another dancer dance the movement or the choreographer dance, you're not having to translate it in your head. You can see the vibe. You're translating it from dance to dance, It's not like when someone's telling you everything in words and you're kind of having to go from words, convert it in your head to like a visual, and then turn that into movement. And it's having to go through all these kind of filters before it finally comes out. And so, and that's something I appreciate in choreographers who are willing to, even if it's imperfect or you're working with dancers of a different technique, just give the movement a go, because even if you can't do it, because it does help convey the idea or the intention, kind of as you say, in a way that you can't when you're just sort of sitting on the side just using words alone. And the same goes for teaching as well. Like I just think as a teacher, it's always better to put the emphasis on demonstration rather than teachers I've had in the past that don't show you anything and they just say it all, and then you're like, I'm having to do all this translation in my head, like just show me, and then we don't have to have like almost this like kind of language barrier.
Physicality is so direct. That's the beauty of movement and dance, and it's something that everyone has anyway. I think we all analyze like body language before we analyze words as well. So it's like, it's so much there even in the everyday life. And then if you bring this into the studio, into the theater, into, I don't know, I mean, dance doesn't have to be in a studio, in a theater. It can also be on the square. And if you put this on the square, you can share a lot through the body. And like I can say a million things about, why don't you move like with a million curves happening at the same time? But then physicalizing that as a mover and as a dancer, then I discover more and more, and I can give you more and more. And I see you, you give me more, and I give you more. And there is a connection that,
right.
Physicality is very direct.
Yeah. So it almost helps you build the idea, like using physicality to build the idea with the dancers in the room in a way.
Yes. Yeah, because I can do a million movements that are cool for me, but also I need to bring the best out of the people that are there.
Yeah.
Not the people that some people, others have seen once doing it. Definitely your dream and your the way that you have imagined something is going to inform what you're looking for. You're going to go and dig and put a process to reach it. but you have specific people in front of you. So the process needs to serve them in a way that you can bring the best out of them while respecting their body, while challenging them to make it exciting, while at the same time bringing in life what you have in your mind for this choreography, because you're the one doing all the little directing with little chairs and little lights and little movements in your head.
Yeah. To what degree? Hold on, let me just take my jumper off. I'm mad hot, and then I'll ask the question.
Go for it. It's very hot here as well. Better.
Getting toasty.
Yeah, no, don't get.
What was I going to ask? I was going to ask to what degree with your choreography do you think about are things sort of pre-planned and predetermined, and you have like a clear idea, and what do you sort of like lead to? Oh, I'll discover that along the way, or we'll just see where that goes or that develops. How do you sort of like handle that ratio, or do you sort of like to have a general idea, but then you work out the details, or what's that movement from idea to process to final piece like for you?
Do you want me to comment on that maybe in general, or shall I focus on greener grass and then, because that can be many things.
Tell us about it in relation to your new work, greener grass. Okay.
Yeah. So let's say in relationship to that, I think I had, specifically this one, it was kind of like, it came from a text. So the whole idea is based on a text that I wrote, because I write a little bit as well, and I have a blog that I write sometimes, not every time, but I write a lot in general. And so it's based on a text. So it had a very clear, not story, but a very clear structure a little bit. It was a very clear thing. And then movement-wise, quite a lot of things come to me as inspirations. So for example, and I have imagined that it will have ribbons on the floor and spoiler alert. So I imagine like ribbons, like red ribbons around the whole space, creating pathways. Okay, there is something there. And then, and I have this feeling of like two people coming together and finding this and finding that. So that was last year when we did the R&D. And then I thought, and I really want inside it to have Greek dancing, and then to have like lots of people on stage. And then I did something like that. We tried it. I go always in an R&D process before the creation. So I give myself the permission to play and to be free and have less pressure about creating a product. So last year we did an R&D and the sharing. And it was such an amazing process. But from that process, the choreography now that we're making is completely different. We haven't kept even one single movement from the choreography. But we have kept loads. We have kept the text that you hear it in recording. We have kept the feeling. So it was worth for me to go into the last 2 minutes of the piece last year doing full-on Greek folk dancing. And even though I don't do that anymore, that has informed the process. And now I know what is there for me in the end of the piece, if that makes sense. So I'm very open in destroying something that I have in my mind. In other pieces, in Greener Grass, I had made the whole structure in my head, beginning until the end, 35 minutes, and then I worked in it. But the structure is the same. It's usually based as well in movement material I have created with my body, that then we develop that and we make it into a piece, or we go into creative tasks.
Well, it's like having that R&D kind of like having those things kind of can help you. And I find this, especially as pieces go on, like you start to get to what is important in the piece and what is the piece really, about, what is its like kind of core essence, and figuring out also what the piece isn't, rather than just what it is. And kind of, as you say, sometimes it's, I find like the form can change around the piece, but you're in a process of refining what's the core idea that we're really pulling out here and showing on stage. And as you say, that's so important to have that early moments of discovery, and it gives you confidence as an artist as well, because it gives you more when you do come to creation and being more editorial and nailing down movement, it gives you more confidence that you've done your due diligence and that you've really explored all the kind of edges and corners of this idea, so that you have a firmer belief in the idea that you did pick, knowing that you looked at these other ideas and you went for this one, rather than just going straight for the idea and then looking at that other idea in the corner and going like, but should we have taken that direction? So it's helpful as well to do all that, just for having a better understanding of the process and what you're making, but also a little bit more just kind of confidence in your direction as well.
And also to give time, because I feel it needs time. It needs time in the body to be embodied. It needs time in the mind as a choreographer and as a performer to grow and to realize what is there. That's why we sleep, no? Because we process things in our sleep. So I feel we need time to process. At least as a choreographer, I feel I need time to process. If you tell me make a piece next week, I will. But it will be better if you tell me make a piece for next year. I think. I don't know. We can try it. That would be a cool experiment.
Yeah, maybe both are good. Make a piece in a week, or make a piece in a year. It's a good challenge, actually. The 1 week choreo challenge. We'll hashtag it below.
It's interesting that saying that, like greener grass, the movement material we're using now.
Yeah.
At the beginning, we saw this time I came to the studio as a beginning point with a movement material I had made 2 years ago that it was irrelevant to the text. And I had made it one day in my room, a 5 minutes choreography just on a song I was inspired by, and that was it.
Really?
So our starting point is this material. We're not using it pure, but that was our starting point, because somehow we found it really falls together with the theme of the piece.
Right.
So that kind of like is two different parts and times of my life and the parts of creativity that they kind of fell in together. And it took time for one to go to the other, and it took time for me to realize that those two actually go together.
Right.
So I think it's important to give time, because you never know what will come.
I often find that's the way that like choreography, and part of it is that it's such a holistic art form. Choreography brings in a lot of elements to it. But I often find it ends up bringing together a lot of elements in questions in my life together in one place. You know, in that, yeah, and it's always interesting what emerges, or the ways in which you can find questions that you had over here, or dance material that you had over here, suddenly kind of meeting together in this choreography and actually finding a lot of meaning. And it's in a way, it can be a way in which like we construct meaning out of disparate elements, like that inspire us, you know, taking something over here. And although they don't initially relate, it's the process of the choreography in which we bring them together and give them meaning, and give them narrative, and give them a kind of a shared world and a shared place to coexist, and for those things to respond to one another and be together in the same kind of space. And I think it's great as well what you say, because it's this other thing of like no choreo, no movements wasted. You know, I think there are times in choreography when you just need to, there's a section of movement that you love, but it makes no sense for the piece, and you're like, we just got to cut it.
Yeah.
But those ideas always come out somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm always, in the long term, I'm always way happier that I cut movement, because I find a project that it was that kind of movement language was more suited for. But
and I trust improvisation a lot as well in those moments, like taking the material that you think you put there and then completely destroying it and destroying it completely, like being free with it and playing with it. And also improvising a lot of even this material came from improvisation, and then looking back at it, I do that a lot. And people like my friends, my dance company that I love so much, they sometimes, like, I think say, not hate me about it, but like it is challenging to learn back from video that is improvising,
Yeah.
So, but I find there is something so raw. I'm very
Yeah.
interested in emotion. I'm very interested in emotion and the whole psychology behind movement, the whole subconscious expression of movement. So I find there is something so true and honest in improvisation that then learning exactly what you did maybe will give you something back.
Yeah.
That is true to something. And then, of course, you use the compositional skills and you use everything else. But I think.
And nuance as well. Like I often find with with like when you're improvising, especially because it is sort of sort of unpolished and it is responding in the moment. Sometimes there's like details in there that if I was like coming up with choreography, like you would just never put in there. But sometimes when you see an improvisation, it's like, oh, like that finger is like there. And like I would never choreograph it like that. But because I'm just moving in the moment, that like that is moving that way. But also by seeing it in an improvisation, you're like, oh, that movement is about that finger. Like, like that's actually where like the action is and like where the feeling is almost is sometimes in those like really tiny details, which as you say are just like totally painful to learn if you're a dancer, but it can produce some really interesting like choreography and really kind of surprising kind of like
rhythms as well. Yeah. Interpose definitely. And also the rhythm, as you say, the rhythm and everything. Like we have this part in greener grass that we were learning from the video. And like even though we're not going to use these 5 minutes as they are, it was very important for us to really learn them and to really make sure we know what we're doing. And we had Yannick Moth is the rehearsal director, so he came in and he really digged on the details of the movement because it was very important to understand the feeling that I thought is the one that matches. So then even if we keep only 5 of the movements and we build them up and we use composition to change them, then it's pure and it comes from this moment. But yeah, there are some moments that we are back in this project now about 3 weeks. We still have no idea. Is this place, like I'm in my room in London and I'm doing this weird like breath hand thing that we're still, me and Christina, we're looking at the video, going back, looking again, going back. I'm like, what am I doing? She's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. Like I have no idea what's happening.
Is this even the same dancer? You're like, who is this girl?
It's like, is it because is there is something about the rhythm in the improvisation and the detail, which is like, what's happening? It's interesting.
Yeah, and like, what was I feeling that day that I moved like that? But that's why like we love improv. Like I'm definitely come from like a background in improv, coming from like breaking and salsa. Like those are primarily improv styles. And so learning how to do choreography took a while for me. But I just love improv, especially for the way in which it helps you find just new territory as a dancer really quickly. And I think it integrates things faster. Like normally when I'm trying to learn a new style, like even if it is things or movements and in contemporary and in ballet and, you know, these things which are kind of newer for me or less natural, I find the way that it really comes home isn't in choreography, it's in improvisation. And it's only when I get that movement into my improv that it's really in my body, you know, because I've found a way to use that movement to move spontaneously.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I think I connected with this material from like 2 years ago, because the piece is talking about this feeling that we think that things are better somewhere else. That we think that the grass is greener on the neighbor's garden, or that the sky is more blue if you fly to, I don't know, Dubai, and you know, or it has to be, or maybe the next job will be better than this job, or the next relationship will be better than this relationship. So always this idea of, you know, something else is better, and where I am is not the ideal. I haven't found the perfection I'm looking for somehow. And I was like, okay, there are many moments, maybe I have felt that as well in different parts of my life, but I was like, that improvisation that day, I was in that point, where am I going? Where should I be? I think I was in the point of like, should I stay in London? Will it be better to go back home? Should I just take a backpack and go to Brussels and move? So I was like, why not to use this material that feeling was real, and it was there, and it was really there. So I can take that and use it because, as you say, like it was there. And then also the other thing that was very interesting about this process is that back then I had done it with a song that it was a song from the internet I had found from a beautiful musician that uses Greek songs. And that was the improvisation I had done back then, that I kind of set it in a day. And now we have an amazing musician, Jeff Bagger. He was in London as well for many years, creating the music for us now. We are creating it now. And that now it has created a new way of moving again, because me and Christina are using the rhythm of the old song, the one I was improvising to, and then playing with the rhythm of the song we have now. And that creates straight away much more interesting idea, which otherwise maybe I would be very affected by the music if I had the music first, as I was by Egomas. Egomas, right. My other piece was the music came first.
And then in those kind of things, you can have like a really interesting layer of visual rhythms and audio rhythms that can be kind of working together, and can be kind of like a way of like almost how you would layer drum rhythms of different syncopations over one another. And it can be really visually interesting to see like how those things work together. Tell us a little bit about so this feeling of like with greener grass, of like moving, of the grass is always greener on the other side. You know, was that sort of inspired by lockdown, or sort of that, or the, you know, the questions of, you know, where to live and all of that? Where did those ideas kind of come from?
That is an interesting question. I've been trying to remember the day I wrote the text, because the text, it is the big stone, let's say, the beginning point of this piece. But I think it's definitely the fact that I'm from Greece and that I live in England. And there is always, when I'm in Greece, something is missing from England, because I've been based in London now for 9 years. Oh my God! Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I've grown up in England. I feel I grew up in Greece and then I grew up in England. So it's funny. So it's this feeling that there is always something missing in both places, and I've been having this feeling all the years since I left. So that was always there. And I had made another piece in my third year of Laban that it was called The Process of Living. And it was full of seashells. So I started and I did text there as well. So I filled that piece, and I only realized now that I'm telling you, thank you for that. I think that piece was kind of like me realizing that a little bit. And then I think that text came to a point, it was before lockdown, it was before Corona. It was last year, October, I think, 2019. Wow. And I think it had a lot to do with, again, should I move back to Greece? Will I ever move back to Greece? How much more? Why am I in the UK for? What are my goals here? Should I have a timeline? Should I stay for 5 more years and then go back? Should I never move back to Greece? It's always a lot like that. And then, as I love teaching, choreographing, and performing, there's also been the past years that I've been doing all the three, it makes me really happy. But at the same time, there's always the question, oh yeah, but maybe, you know, if I'm only in a full-time company as a performer, that will be what my dream is. Or, oh, wait a second, maybe I can be full-time choreographer and just dance my own pieces, and that makes both. Yeah, but I love teaching. Or maybe I should just do teaching and go in a professional dance school and try to become a full-time teacher at Laban, and that will make me happy. So it was a point of, I was already out of training a few years. I was not a recent graduate anymore. I had danced many pieces that I want to dance. I had started choreographing. I had established the teaching hours and process and workshops that I was leading. So I was like, okay, it was a tipping point of where am I going? And then not only that, but it has many things inside. Also about other people's jobs, and talking with people about thinking, you know, maybe I should change my job, I should change this. Because there is so much freedom to change things right now. There is so much information on social media, on TV. I mean, not now that we cannot travel, but when I was writing this, you could travel anywhere in the world. Like you could decide, I want to live in Brussels, and you could live in Brussels if you're in Europe, let's say. Or for people as well that they are in countries that they have war and they leave, because immigration and there's a huge issue in Greece about this, and we have lots of people that they come to Greece with boats in the sea, in the Aegean Islands, try to find a better life. So it's loads of things there. And what I realized is that in my personal experience, I've been also very lucky to have a choice. So I think in the end, this piece kind of appreciates the opportunity of choice and how then you can share that. But then realizing a little bit that in the end, there is a very nice Greek song that says, oh, you wanted to go to the shiny Paris, but then you realize that the world everywhere is the same. And it's like, and then it's about what you do, what you carry with you. And in the end, for me, is what you realize that you can step on and share further than yourself, because the whole world does not involve around you. So, okay, yes. But how do you find your own feet so then you can share things? And how can you follow what you really want to do in order to take you there? And how can you listen to that?
It's yeah, that's beautiful. It's like, it is such a process for sure. And I think it is a little bit of acknowledging the imperfection of life.
Yeah.
But also, you know, that life is a creative balancing act, you know. Sometimes we're killing it in our careers, but like our personal life is in shambles. Or, you know, sometimes the family life is really good and we have good friendships, but, you know, maybe things, you know, aren't working out there. You know, sometimes they're all happening at once and that's great. And then sometimes none of them are happening, you know. And it is this kind of like push and pull of, you know, and this thing as well, in particular, sometimes we have dreams that are in conflict with one another, you know, where we want, you know, this thing and we want this thing, but those two things don't particularly work well together. And so it is a creative act, you know, and
it is
of building and creating our professional lives in a way that we can think about, how can I, you know, what do I need? What can I live without? And what can I, you know, do to build my career in a way that's going to be supportive of what I need kind of psychologically, and in terms of what I need from family, in terms of what I need from the place where I live, you know, in terms of my surroundings, you know, is there certain like kind of weather or certain like, you know, is it countryside or cities, or is there, you know, certain family things, like all of these things, and it's not just one or the other. There's can be some creativity there to figure it out, you know. And it's the wonderful part of being in a creative industry and being a creative individual, is that like most artists will give it a go. And that, as you say, even though these are difficult choices to make, at least we have those choices, you know. At least we can, these are kind of good problems to have in a way of going, you know, how do I find a way to make all these different things happen, as well
it's
the things that you want as well, which is important.
It's so interesting. Like every time I'm in London, and everyone says, "Oh my God, you're from Greece! I've been for holidays. The best. I want to move there." And then every time I'm in Greece, people are like, "You live in London? I want to move there. Like it has so many jobs." And I'm like, "Okay." It's very interesting. And then it's another part which is based again in psychology that I'm really fascinated by and I use in my work, is the fear of missing out. As well. That is part of this. Like. Social media also helps on that, but you always think you're missing out on something. Or even in lockdown, like I find people saying, many people at the moment in Greece, they're like, "Oh yeah, but maybe I shouldn't be in Athens right now," when before everyone wants to be in Athens, because Athens right now in lockdown is a lot of cases and a lot of strict lockdown, so maybe I should move to a village for now. So then it's also the time that affects those contrasts, what you need to choose and what you want to do. And it's very interesting. I've been reading some from an amazing psychologist. I've been reading 2 of her books the past year that have informed this a lot as well. There's a lot about contrast. Her name is Esther Perel. She has some beautiful TED Talks as well. And she talks a lot about relationships, but also I think it's a very nice idea of how we want this contrast that you said. We want to have a great job, but we want to have time. So our job doesn't have to be 10 hours per day. We want to be in a relationship and have a house and have someone that is always there for us, but we want to be free. We want to be erotic and we want to be like, do whatever we want. So this is in the human nature, and it's not a problem. It's okay. It is what it is. But at the same time, it is something that you do find that you will have contrast and contradictions, that they can be emotionally quite harsh at moments. And at the same time, it is some big decisions you need to make in your life at some point. They're like, I don't know, maybe it can be anything really, from family, as you say, to work, to career, to even have to choose, I don't know, to even have to choose to have a baby or not. That we're talking before as well about the female body. And then, I don't know, it's a million things that there's always pathways. It's something about pathways and contrast and this thing that as humans, we want both. So what do we do? You want to be on holidays in Greece, but you also have to have the wage from London, and you want to have a house, but you want to have a place in the mountain as well without a roof. I don't know.
And you can see all of that in greener grass.
Yeah, all of that. I think it gives. I think what is nice about this piece. No, I don't know. What fascinates me about this creation and this research in this piece is that it's something that you can follow very easily. It's not there like for you to be like, oh, what is this? What is he saying? Oh, they're moving like this. It's very clear. I have imagined as something very clear that you can follow and see and hear the words and see the movement and hear the music and feel the energy. And then you can connect. It allows you to connect with what you have. That's why it can be a million things. And it's not, oh, me and Christina are best friends and we travel together from Germany to Brussels. It's not a story in that sense. It's a place that we are what we are, that I don't want to say what it is because we might be many things. So let's say that we have, as a duet, we might be different people. We might be the same person. We might represent for someone a relationship that is a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or so it doesn't. I'm trying to keep it open for people to be able to find their own experience of this contrast, their own experience of this better life somewhere else. So then anyone can take whatever they want from it and whatever they feel. So even though there is a clarity in the pathways we're sharing, there is a lot of freedom for someone to do their own connections and find their own feeling and meaning in that.
So it's not so much just like a linear narrative. It's really about having different ways or images of things exploring this theme and sort of teasing it out in different.
Yeah, because if I tell you your mom, like, I don't know, if I tell you your mom's food to anyone, they will think of something. Maybe someone has never met their moms. Maybe someone, their mom doesn't know how to cook. Maybe someone lives away from their mom and they're 35, but actually they really miss the smell of the food. Maybe someone had a food allergy when they were 16 and all they can remember about them. You know what I mean? So there are some things in the text, let's say, that it talks about, oh, your mom's food, your favorite song. These things are very personal to everyone. But I'm not telling you your favorite song should be, I don't know, the Love Me or Die that I love from like Stone King.
Yeah. It's a great approach to this theme, I think. And so where can people check out this work? You're performing it. Is it July that it will be?
Yeah, hopefully, if things open, I really, really hope. I mean, we will have a few places, but for now, our first performance is going to be hopefully in my hometown in Greece, which is great. So I'll dance again in my hometown, which will be beautiful, and the piece that I made. So we will be in Patras Art Festival. That is organized by Irini Apostolatou, a great friend and colleague that she also has lived in London before. So that will be in July. And I think it's the 9th and 10th. But yes, it is the 9th and 10th of July in Patras. And until then, we will have quite a lot of online material as well to share. And maybe we'll have some surveys around it as well that people can find on my Instagram. That is Vivian Tr. I haven't put my whole surname. People, don't worry. You don't need to spell Triantafyllopoulou.
That's all right.
That would never happen.
We'll drop it in the description below. People can check it out.
And also Facebook is Vivian Tr again, so people can find me. And my website, we will be uploading. I'm gonna remake my website soon, so it will have more information about greener grass as well, and all the dates and the ways of booking it. And that's viviantr.com. So. Yeah, so we're really excited. It's going to be a festival of like short pieces, like 10, 15 minutes pieces in Patras. And it's great because dance is growing in Greece and it's growing to small towns and not only in Athens. So that's going to be a great opportunity. And hopefully in London soon as well, we can perform it.
That'd be dope. Yeah. That's so awesome, man. I'm so excited for you. Thank you for being on the podcast, and thank you to all our listeners for chiming in, and we'll see you next week.